Hello, this is
Hey
Echo
there,
Turdick.
how are ya?
How are you doing?
Good.
This is good. This is Echo Chernick. You are listening to the sultry sounds of the professional artist on UPRN Public Radio 1077. I'm with Bob Eggleton. Bob, say hi.
How you doing, everybody? It's good to be here.
And if you want to see our smiling faces, make sure you go over to YouTube and follow us there as well. It's on Echo Chernick. And Bob, you have been illustrating for what, 1,000 years now?
Oh, but I had decided, this goes back way back. Okay. I decided in 1969 I wanted to do comic books. I wanted to do comic book covers. I was 9. And comic books, and I actually thought comics were individually drawn for me. I had this weird idea that they were. I was later
For you specifically?
Yeah. And I mean, I grew up with Jack Kirby, with Mike Ploog, with John Severin, with John Buscema, the greatest. The Marvel bullpen is what they called them, and that's what I was really into. And the thing is that it all coalesced for me because back in 1964, this is 60 years ago, I was taken to the New York World's Fair and I saw dinosaurs for the first time in my life. And I saw the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the Sinclair Oil. Sinclair Oil did this big exhibit of dinosaurs and early, and it was like they had a freaking Tyrannosaurus Rex and they had a freaking Brontosaurus and we called them Brontosauruses then. And then they had a Triceratops, and this 4-year-old had never seen, 3 or 4 years. No, I was 3. I'd never seen anything quite like it in my life. And so 2 years later, 3 years later, my mother bought me a present at the local store, and it was 69 cents. It was an Ideal board game. Remember we played board games back in the day? And it was called The Godzilla the Game. And it had this big, she goes, it had a dinosaur on it. And it's like Godzilla torching New York City. And I was in love, and I said, "Who is this Godzilla? I'm going to find this Godzilla. I'm going to pursue this Godzilla." But in the meantime, I was a kid in school and elementary and all that, and I had done this kind of the art teacher had given me some things to put together with shapes. They give you a bunch of shapes. And they go put them together and make a picture out of them. And these are glue on. You use the old glue. Remember the glue you could eat?
And, the edible stuff. Yeah.
and what the art teacher, I did a boat on an ocean. The art teacher was floored when I took these triangles and put them one over each other, so it looked like perspective. And she just calls my mother in. Are you the mother of this child? Like that. So what has he done now? She's saying. And she said, "Look, he did this." She goes, "He is gifted. He is talented. You need to do something with this. Encourage this, encourage this, encourage this." So my mom got me into a lot of classes. This is a really long historical thing. And my dad, who was sat me in front of a chalkboard. I was very ill when I was a kid. I had a lot of different things that I won't get into, but just stuff. And so he sat me down and he got me this chalkboard, his big old chalkboard, and I drew stuff, and he said, "This is how perspective works. This is how, when you do a house, the chimney's like this way, it's this way, and how everything had a back to it and a front to it and things like that." So I was learning this stuff at about 5 or 6 years old. And my dad was an engineer, and he was he worked with machines a lot. His name was Richard, and really wonderful guy. And God, I miss him. And he invented the Teflon nonstick frying pan, to give you an idea. So every time you've cooked in a Teflon nonstick frying pan back in the day, that was my dad's patent. But he never saw any money out of it, because he was not really good in business. But anyway, be that as it may, they took me to he introduced me to Star Trek in 1968, right at the height of the Vietnam War. Here I'm watching Kirk going like, in the heart, in the head, I won't stay dead, while something sits back and laughs and starts it all over again. Kang! Like that, and this was like, I'm an 8-year-old, and it's like, this is having this profound effect on me. And then in 1970 or 71, They released 2001: A Space Odyssey, the Stanley Kubrick movie, and it came to the local theater down here, big screen we had. And they said to me, they go, "Oh, we're going with a bunch of adults." And they said, if you need some explanation of what this film is like, don't hesitate to ask. Well, guess who explained it to them? and then anyway, so I grew up as a child of the 70s with the comic books and Famous Monsters of Filmland and everything. There's no internet. It was just creature feature on TV. We go to TV guides, the monster movies on TV or the science fiction movies. I watched Star Trek, Space 1999, anything science fiction. We were so desperate for it. There was no streaming. There was no DVDs. There were no VHS. There was none of that. And that was the future. And anyway, so what I had realized was, I realized as I got into this, I'm going like, this is going to be this thing in my life. This is going to be really important. And I was drawing the stuff too at the same time. And so anyway, in high school, they were saying, oh, art will never get you anywhere. You won't get anywhere with art. Art is like 95% unemployed. Blah, 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 blah. I was like, well, I can't think of anything else I want to do. And I was this dweeby kid. Really dweeby kid. And I had so much fun doing art-related projects in high school. And everybody knew me for it. And everybody thought, you must have been really unpopular in high school. No, I wasn't. I just checked my yearbook. There's a picture of me 8 times in there, including voting most artistic in my class. And so anyway, I got out of high school. I met an artist named Eric Ladd, who at the time was the vanguard. He was with Carl Lundgren and Mike Whalen and all these new artists coming into the thing who were doing book covers. And I saw an article on him in the paper, and I called him up. I called up the guy who wrote the article, and he said, I'll give you his number. And I called Eric up. And Eric said, hey, come on down, man. Eric's like a hippie. And he was like, come on down, like that, So, it's like I walk into his house and those interesting plants you have growing there. And anyway, Eric showed me his paintings, and he looked at my work, and he said, Jesus, he said, you're really talented. And he said, I think you got a place here. You got to play, they're looking for all kinds of people. It's going to be very big. And so he said, you got to go to a show called Boscone. And it was in Boston, Massachusetts. And he said, the best artists in the world are there. And he said, you're going to love it. So 1979, on a cold winter's day in February, I took a bus up there, paid $5 to get into Boscone. And I walk in, the first thing I see is Michael Whalen's White Dragon painting.
Oh, I love that one.
In the flesh. Oh. And I was like that. And the next year, they'd advertised there was a WorldCon coming in 1980 at Boston. What the hell's a WorldCon? Oh, cool. And this was back in the day when like there was no internet. So we got progress reports. So I paid $20 for art space in the WorldCon, $20 for a membership. Like, think about this. And I had a job. I'd worked at Toys R Us at one point. I mean, that's pretty, I worked around toys, cool. And so I paid for a membership with that. And then I had gone up to see, I got a bunch of my friends together, and I said, let's share a hotel room. The hotel room in downtown Boston was a heartbreaking $29 a night, and the convention rate. So we had 6 guys in there. So some people slept on the floor, some people slept on the bed. And so I brought my art over, put it in the art show. I made $300 in the art show, and I spent an entire, including food, $175 for 5 days at a World Science Fiction Convention.
Wow.
And it gets even better because I won Best Amateur Artist in the show in both divisions. And I got to meet Don Mates and Kelly Freese and Mike Whalen and Rick Sternbach. And
you're hooked. Yeah.
I was like, okay, we're going like that, and I started getting into this whole thing. And at the time in 1981, this is a really brief history of my life here. 1981, I got a job. Walked in 11% unemployment in Rhode Island. I walked right into an art supply store called Oaks on the Hill, and I overheard them saying that somebody just quit. They needed a new person, and they were watching me buying stuff and helping me like recommend brushes to like an art student. It's an old art store that went back decades, back to the 40s. So it smelled like sawdust. It smelled like old wood, and
Best kind.
they had all kinds of old stuff in there. And the guy just comes over and he said, "Do you want a job here?" And I said, "Sure," like that. So they gave me this job. They full-time benefits. I got Saturdays and weekends off. And I got a 40% discount on art supplies. And I had this supervisor named Bob, who his name was Bob too. And he comes along and he goes, and he's like this. He's like, "Oh, hey, Bob, we're getting these new pens in. The Yashitomo company sent me these things. You want to, here, take them. Take these brushes, take them out. You're an artist, test them out. Get back to me. You can keep them too." So I get the best free supply of paints and art supplies because I was the testing guy. And so anyway, and then people would come in thinking art supply store, they're thinking artist supply store. And they come in saying, "Do you need any artists?" And so the staff would say, "Him." And I would get little jobs like $25, $30 for like a portrait or whatever. And then there was the teachers at RISD. They catered to the school, run School of Design. And the teachers included Chris Van Allsburg and David McCauley and some of the great painters and artists. And they would all say to me, I get waiting on them, selling them art supplies. And they'd say, "Hey, why don't you come over to our class? We're going to have a critique." Yeah, okay. So I went over to the classes and watched, like, this is at the time a $12,000 a year school. And I went over there like for free. And I sat in on things, and that's how it all blossomed. And then eventually Oaks, it sort of petered out. The job went elsewhere. And I had a very good friend of mine say to me, "So what are you going to do? You going to go back to another job again? Or are you going to like take it and jump into the fray and do art?" So I started, connected to another well-known professional artist at the time in 1983. And I realized some people watching this were born in 1983. And he took me around to meet like advertising firms, and I just sit and watch how he dealt with things, and I sat in on things. And this was the days when you could call somebody up on the phone and say, "Hi, I'm such and such. Can I show you my portfolio?" And they'd say, "Yeah, sure, come right in." And then you get in, and they come in, they bring their staff in, and everybody would gush over you, and they tell you, "Oh, this is really great, blah, blah, blah." Or sometimes they tell you, "Well, they've got no use for you." And then you say goodbye. But that was because we had 12 or 15 different advertising firms in the town. And you could just go to any one of them. And then they say, "Could you do me a little spot illustration? We can't pay a lot. We get $300. That's pretty good. I'll take it." And so I did. And that started that. And then I went to a convention, and this was Boscone, and I credit them. They had the best art show. They had the best art show. They had Mike Whalen, everybody in the early 80s. It was Wonderland. And publishers would come to these conventions. This is how, little backstory, how things would go. Publishers would come to the conventions, and they would say, "We're going to have a party. We're going to have a Bain Books party, or we're going to have a Tor Books party," or whatever. And you'd go up there, and there'd be editors and art directors, and you could just talk to them. And like at one point, Jim Bain, founder of Bain Books, looked at my stuff and he goes, "Hey, I like your stuff. It's really good. Could you do book covers for me?" I'm like, "Yes." And I sent him a bunch of slides, and he bought one right off the bat for the old Dell science fiction line, because he was packaging that at the time. We had what's called packagers back then. You had Byron Price Visual Publications. You had Cloverdale Press. What they do is they package things for bigger publishers, and they would just hire artists all the time. And Byron Price was a great guy that I met, and he hired me. He brought me in. And I would traipse around New York till my feet were sore, and I'd have my portfolio with me, and I'd make appointments on payphones and everything. This is what you did. And I'd stay in like a 42nd Street hotel where there's something going on in the room next door, you know what I mean? And you're like, and meanwhile, I'm just traipsing around, and if I was real lucky And it happened. I came out of New York with a couple of book cover jobs, and it was like, and they just said, hey, we've seen your stuff at conventions, not the internet. We've seen your stuff at conventions. And we love your stuff, and that's how it all started for me. Now that's 40 years ago. That's a long time ago. And then things became very, in the 90s, I was really rolling along. I was half my age now that I was in the 1990s. So I had the energy and the chutzpah to do it. And the thing is that I didn't quit. I stayed at it. I didn't take the rejection. And I had rejections. I had people telling me, well, your work's not up to our standard. I didn't take it badly. I just went to other people that liked my work. And that's what was important, is you stay at it. You get knocked down, you pick yourself up, you stay at it. That's what's important about anything. And that's my advice to any younger artists, any illustrators, anybody. You get knocked down, pick yourself up, keep at it. And if you do something you love, and you have the passion in it, you have the passion, the excitement in it, the money will come. And all of that will unfold before itself. And unfortunately, as we were talking earlier privately, things have just got complicated now. Everything's so complicated. Like they don't talk on the phone anymore. Nobody wants to talk on the phone. I've encountered things, Echo, where people say, oh, younger artists say, well, they say, oh, this person said, I can't look at your portfolio legally.
Yeah, because of it's more complicated than it used to be. It used to be you just meet up with them, like you were saying. You just meet up and they're like, "Oh, here's a job and here's another job." And now it's there's more paperwork and it's more complicated.
Yeah.
You said you were running into that.
Yeah. And it's something to see, and I've found myself, as I've gotten Godzilla came back to me in 1998. Was my mother? I always loved the movies, and I went to the here we go, and I went to the movies and all this kind of stuff. And then my friend, I started working with Dark Horse Comics, who were publishing Godzilla books at the time. And Randy Stradley, who's the editor there, is a big Godzilla fan. And he called me up and he said, I would do a couple of covers for me. So I did the covers. And that was great. It was just like so much fun to do. And there was approvals. And that was my first introduction to dealing with licensing and approvals. And I can get into that a little bit, where, you deal with licensors. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's really strange because you know more about their stuff than they know about their stuff.
Yeah, and I've run into that.
I found that with the Star Trek people. God bless. I mean, Paramount Pictures, love you. You did a great product, but your approval people were kind of weird when I was working with them, saying, like, I said, no, that's the call letters of this starship. That's the call, that's the way the trim looked on it. That's the way it, anyway. So, and they're going like, no, well, that's not our thing. And I'm going, and then they come back and they say, well, you should have done that way to begin with. And I'm going, well, I told you. It's like, let's see. And it was this whole political thing where they don't want to look bad. They were wrong. They don't want to say they were wrong. And that's another thing you've got to admit. You've got to say to yourself, to be successful as a person, as an artist, you've got to say sometimes you're wrong. You're, like I've said many times, I've said, okay, I made a misjudgment on it. I was wrong. And don't be afraid of that, because people will appreciate it. And as anybody that knows me, I have an honesty they call it to a fault. But
communication is really important. Sometimes you just have to buckle up and communicate with your client. I've had to call people up and say, listen, we got to communicate here, because we're not communicating.
Yeah, because you end up dealing with a committee. And like I said, I did magic cards in 1997, 96, 97, 98. And it was a blast. It was like I did these little paintings, and I worked with a wonderful person named Maria Cabardo and Sue Ann Harkey, and they were wonderful people. And we worked with faxes, right? Faxes.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And I'd scribble something. I'd do something like this, and I'd like stick it in the fax machine, and they'd say, and because Maria called me up, and she'd go, "Hi, Bob, like it's Maria," like that. And she'd tell me about how her life is going and her kids.
On a corded phone that was stuck to the wall, so you couldn't go that far.
And she'd say, "Hey, listen, I need you to do a card for me. Could you do like a tornado hitting a mountain? That's kind of your kind of thing, isn't it?" I'll go, Yeah. So I'm like literally got a pad in front of me as we're talking, and I'm going. And then as we're talking, I was like, oh, so how's the kids doing? And all like that. And I said, your fax machine ready? And I fax her a sketch. And she'd call me back in an hour, and it'd be like, I'm going to hold it up above the cubicle, Bob. And you'd hear, and she goes, I think that's an approval. And I'm like,
those days.
Great. And she goes, here's the thing. Can I, like, I need it. I know it's Tuesday. Can I get it for Friday morning? I know it's tight. Can I do that? I can throw you another additional money. Okay. Like that, you know, so, and this is just literally how things fell into line. It was just like easy. You could just call people up and talk to them. And the communications was really great. And this was way before the internet. This was way before we started talking on emails and doing Dropboxes and doing sites and all this kind of stuff. And now it's all focus groups and is Blue going to sell next year? And, you know, this sort of thing. And that really takes the fun out of everything. And it's the whole bottom line now is selling. And back in my time, starting as an illustrator for book jackets, here's a good example. I'll pull this one right out here. This is a book called Black Ambrosia by Elizabeth Engstrom. And back in the day, it was published by Tor Books. They had Tor Horror. They had a Tor Horror line with the most lurid book covers you'd ever seen in your entire life. They were so lurid, they're in a book. This is actually featured in a book called Book Covers from Hell, like that, you know, because I was part of that whole thing. And they were, the more lurid, the more creepy, the more gutsy and bloody, the better. And anyway, so Black Ambrosia, you know, Melissa Singer calls me up and says, I'd like to get like a cane with like a demon-like lizard.
What's going on there on that cover?
Let's see.
Describe it. It's a cane with a lizard
with a demon-like lizard thing on the thing, and she's a female vampire that preys on children, and the book, trust me, it went there. And now that was 35 years ago. Now I'm being paid to recreate, to do, not only they're going to use this in a specialty edition of it, but I've got to recreate like a back cover for it. And then I got to recreate an interior opening illustration showing this vampire monster kind of thing. And so this is like how something comes back to me 35 years later.
Do you still own the rights to the original painting?
They
just paid you for like one-time rights to use the
exactly. As far as I'm concerned, they did, yeah. And back then,
I don't remember actually.
there was no paperwork. They just like said, we'll just pay you like that, you know. Sometimes you walk into a place, you could actually pick up a check walking out. I'm going like, oh, you know, I did that book. Yeah, we got the check for you. Thank you.
Wow.
Like that, you know, and it was a lot less complicated than it is now. So anyway, so I did this thing, and I gained a lot of people that liked my work. And so in 1988, I got my first Hugo nomination for Best Professional Artist. And I didn't think I was going to win because Michael Whalen was the top of his game at the time. And I said, oh, you know, Michael's going to get this. And that's cool because I love Michael's work anyway. I was nominated. It was kind of cool. And then in 1994, when I thought, well, you know, Michael's probably going to get it again, I got a phone call saying, you just won the Hugo Award. I was like, and so I literally got on a plane to Canada the next day, and I went up to Winnipeg to go collect it. And I did this whole song and dance in front of the costume thing. And George Barr represented me the Hugo at the time, and it was freaking hilarious. It was hilarious. My hair was so much longer. It was down here, and I was a lot younger. I was 35, yeah. So and then that resulted in kind of a string of wins for different awards, Chesley Awards, Hugo Awards, and so on. And I just kind of kept at it. And you know, and then I'm entering you know, my age where I want to do the things that count and the things they remember me for. I used to do a lot of advertising work, Echo. I used to do a lot of advertising work, and it was mindless, to put it delicately. I did some billboard artwork. The people I worked with were great. My friend Gary Kashik, he's an art director. I loved him because we go out for lunch and we talk how stupid something was and just do it. And anyway, so I did this stuff, and it's sort of misforgotten stuff because advertising does even those agencies, the way they did businesses, it's just gone now because
yeah.
What's happened is the internet happened. Now everybody can look things up on the internet themselves. Back then, you had to have like a trafficking person or a media consultant, and he or she would come along and they'd go up to MIT, not far from here, which is 40, 50 miles from here. They go up to MIT and use their internet or the ARPANET or whatever it was called back then. And they'd use that to get information this is way before Bill Gates created any kind of formats or anything. And they get all that stuff. So the information was very limited. So you had to hire people to get it. And now, as the internet came along, information went like it was easy to get. So advertising agencies collapsed like dominoes. And these clients were saying, what are we paying them $25,000 a month for anyway? Really? Like that, and so everything changed. And right now, I would say that most of my stuff is sales of originals artwork. I do some commercial work. I'm doing a bunch of book covers, but they vary in price ranges and all kinds of stuff because they're just fun to do. And
You're doing a lot of cool new stuff. You were telling about a new project you're getting involved with.
Yeah, I'm doing. Well, here's one thing that I want to bring up. I had approached a publisher called Easton Press, and they do specialty books. They do gourmet books. They do like books that are like the sell for $400 each. And I said, if you guys do King Kong, because I happen to notice they had the novelization rights to King Kong. Well, in 2021, the novelization rights became public domain. So they said, cool. Would you do King Kong for us? And I said, yo, cool. And we can pay you X amount of dollars. And I said, and that'd be for 8 paintings. I said, well, for that amount of money, I'll do 10 paintings for you. So I did this beautiful, look at this thing. It's just gold edges, and like you open it up and it's got a certificate of authenticity. And this is the stuff. And guess what? At almost $400 each, and 1,200 limited edition copies signed by me. It even says on the spine, look at this. Illustrated by Bob Eggleton, King Kong, Bob Eggleton. Awesome. And this is the movie that did it for me back in the day. And I did this thing, and they're down to like 40 copies out of 1,200 now. It's gone.
That's awesome.
And I'm working on a project called Hyperborea for Centipede Press, and I'm doing 15 color pieces for it. I'm working on you can see part of the last one in the back here. That's being worked on. I've got about 3 paintings on the easel, and I have to take them off and change them around and say, well, what am I going to work on today, Bob? What are you going to work on today, Bob? And this caters to my ADD. I have ADD, which is, I'm honest about that. It's cool. And the most fun I'm having lately has been, I got involved with a project. I'm a big Star Trek fan. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. So I started watching Star Trek Picard, season 3. And I kind of fell in love with the new character, Liam Shaw, Captain Liam Shaw, played by actor Todd Stashwick. And I said, this guy, I love him. He's me. He's like, this Riker and Picard talking about how legendary they are and stuff like that. And then he's in the middle of it and he goes, or they could think about the time that this sort of, I'm kind of the same way. And so anyway, so my wife was watching an interview with him, and she goes, he's a lot like you. And she goes, you got to reach out to him. And so I found out from mutual friends that on Instagram, he had this coffee chat where he talks to his fans on Saturday mornings, and it's real fun. Anybody can do it. You can jump on there, Todd Stashwick, or T Stashwick on Instagram, And anyway, so he does his coffee chat, and he just sits and enjoys coffee, and he talks about his pets, and he talks about his kids, and he talks about his family. And I just jumped in, and he goes, Bob Eggleton, oh my God, I've been a fan of your work for years. And I was like, that's so. We hit it off, and then he's a nerd. He is like the #1 dungeon master for D&D in the universe. This guy is. He's legendary, and he's got a nerd lair where he's got a table named after him. It's a gaming table called the Stashwick. Google it. It's named after him, and it's got fog. It's got nitrogen fog, and it's like a movie set. It's just incredible, and he gets celebrities, and he does celebrity D&D matches and raises money for children's cancer charities and stuff. And I love this guy. So anyway, I reached out to him and I said, you're at this convention that's done in Long Island. That's about 2 hours from me. I'm going to drive down and see you like that. So I did. And the minute, like, Bob, like that. So we hit it off like a house on fire. And he said, would you, if I was to like come up with some idea, like, I said, yes. And so anyway, so he started this idea with his friend David Nett, who's now a friend of mine, and they're this golden guy, the awesome guys, and they did a project called it's called Progcore, and the whole thing is to capture what we loved about, some of us loved about the 1970s fantasy scene, Dungeons and Dragons, the movies of the time, including Labyrinth or like Legend, the Conan films with Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Dark Crystal.
Yeah.
Yeah, all this stuff like this that was like the Ralph Bakshi films, the Rankin Bass, The Hobbit. Remember that film? It's like they had a song back in the Rankin Bass Hobbit film called the Way of the Whip, and I'm going like, only in 1977 could we do that. And anyway, so that's what he wants to recall in this, and he makes it an agnostic, what he calls an agnostic thing that you can apply to Dungeons and Dragons without it actually being listed as a Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing. So the whole thing is going to be, it has the 3 pillars of it are wonder, mystery, and danger, and it's called the Dark Age of Fear. And it's okay. The best way to go is go to www.progcorefantasy.com, and it explains a lot of things. I worked on an animation on it to promote it with his son Oscar, who's a wonderfully talented animator. And Todd and I have hit it off quite well as friends. And I'm like doing this, having a lot of fun. I designed a dragon for him called Thrum. And
love that name, Thrum.
Yeah, Thrum.
And it's so throaty.
Todd did some poetry for it, and it just was out of this world. Like, it's just like, he wrote this thing about this little missive. It's on my Facebook page as a public post. You can go read it. And anyway, so he's doing a whole story, and he's invited Will Wheaton's involved with this. Felicia Day's involved with it. She's going to be involved with the live action play that they want to do. It's kind of a thing. And then there's going to be a soundtrack to it if they get the Kickstarter money going. There's going to be a soundtrack to it by Jeffrey Schumann, and it's going to be our inspirations are things like the group Styx and Led Zeppelin and
gosh, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, and and what everybody's trying to do is what Todd wants to do, and Todd and Dave want to do, is they want to show the great things we loved about that time. It was a very simple time when things were, Dungeons and Dragons and, all this stuff that was cool. And yet give it modern sensibilities, in the sense like give it diversity and make it not avoid sexism and this kind of thing. And the important thing is that as Todd puts it, he said, it is old wine in a new bottle. And that is the best way to do it. And I just think that it's a great way to go. And the minute he suggested this for me, he's like, he calls me up one morning. It had to be 8:30 in the morning, and I'm getting my tea, and I'm in my robe, and the phone rings. Like, Todd Stashwick. He goes, "Hey, Bob," like that. He goes, "This is how he talks. Hey, Bob," like that. He goes, and he He goes, so I got this dragon idea, and he's making dragon sounds with his throat. He's going, like, I'm going, this is amazing. It's like the captain of the starship Titan, and he's like calling me up and then making dragon sounds at me. And
you're in your bathroom.
So I started like sketching up ideas of what, and we started going back and forth with ideas, and it's just such a great project. And David Nett, who's another guy, he runs a geek gym in Burbank, and he's an ex-actor. He's an actor. He used to do a lot of acting, and he's done some YouTube things, and he's another nerd impresario. And he actually came to visit us when we were in Hollywood. We had lunch with him. And what they've done is this is really great for younger artists. They have opened up something called Progcore Fantasy Artist Quest. And you can find it on their site, on the whole Progcore Fantasy.
What's the website again? Just say the whole name.
It's Progcore, www.progcorefantasy.com. And it may go to the Kickstarter holder page, whatever, but you'll see the whole, they've got a thing called Progcore Fantasy artistquest.com, I think it's called. Anyway, so they're opening it up to artists. They need 2 artists, and the artists that not necessarily people like you or myself who make a living doing what we're doing, but like discoveries in a sense. And at least 2 of our illustrators of the future people I know have put in the fray.
Yeah, and, go guys.
And like, it's just like so nice to like see. It's so nice to get that going, because we need to get the future interested in art, because we need art more than we've ever needed it. There are forces in the world that want to take the creativity away from us. There are forces in the world that want to destroy this stuff. And, I won't get into that, but like, just say there are forces in the world that want to make us conform, fit into a box, and but we need to build that future. We need to build the future of the people we are that we want a creative future, and that's so important. I mean, people gave me a leg up when I was young, so I'm perfectly willing to give them a leg up, because that's what I do, and it's good karma. It comes back to you and all that kind of stuff. So
they can just enter there, right? Just throw.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. And
of
course, what?
Anybody ask anything yet?
Yeah, I think you should be able to see the questions on your thing. I clicked the button,
but
I don't know.
Where's
well, I don't know. I'm not sure. But April says hi.
Hi, April.
April says hi. Christopher James says hey, Echo and Bob. Aiden says, I want that table. Heath White says hi. Let's see. Hi, everyone. Hi. Michelle says hi. Lots of highs.
Hi.
Sarah says hi. Emma says hi. Does anybody have any questions? Is the question. I have a question for you, though. So,
if you want to see the table, just Google the Stashwick table. I'm sure it'll come up. And somebody had designed it in his name, and he got one. It's a $15,000 table, but it's like a little set for a fantasy movie, but it's Dungeons and Dragons, and this is what's awesome. Watching him play, and then you can go on YouTube and you can watch him do the Legends of Eleonora, and Eleonora is based on a situation where the little girl, they lost of cancer, and so it's dedicated in her name. And if you see that, you can see him play. He got Jonathan Frakes to play. I mean, he's getting like Will Wheaton involved with it. This is
like so cool.
This is all the Star Trek people are coming in, and that is so cool, because it's like this is like my childhood coming back to itself, and here I am like I'm coming up on like 1968 was when I first saw Star Trek, and it's come full circle for me. And I got to work on Star Trek: The Experience. I was a concept artist. A little more background on me. I got a call out of the blue, and they said, "There's no internet." Out of the blue, "Hi, this is Mariah Camberg. Would you do some concept art for me for Star Trek: The Experience?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure," like that. And that was 1996, and he drove me crazy in a nice way, but he also pushed me to be more creative. And I did a Klingon planet when you went into the ride themed kind of thing. So I can say that was my contribution to Star Trek. And I worked on the movie Sphere, uncredited. I designed the black hole sequence. If you couldn't see that on YouTube, the movie was a dud, but you can see it on YouTube. Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. I designed a bunch of things in that. I designed the worm that you see at the end. I designed Poltra, the giant chicken monster. And I designed some background stuff. And then I worked on the Ant Bully in 2006. I worked on an unproduced movie called The Seahorse. And I did the concept art. I did some work on a movie called The Idol, directed by Norman England. And it's a short movie. You can Google that. It's called The Idol with a small I-D-L. And my recent thing in the movies was working with my friend Eric McEver, my new friend Eric McEver. Again, 37 years old, Eric McEver. He's a director. He lives in Japan and lived in Japan for 10 years, and he worked in anime. He was 13 years old when he first saw my artwork. Talk about make you feel old. And he's 37 now. And he's a director. And he calls me up in 2021. He just contacts me, goes, "Hi, I'm Eric McEver. And like, I've been a fan of your work forever. And I just did an independent film called Ike Boys. And I'd love you to do the movie poster for it. And my producer's going to talk to you about it and all that." And so I said, "Yeah, sure." So Eric and I did a Zoom session. We developed a bromance right there. It was awesome. We just hit it off. And then they said, "Yeah, sure." So I said, "Okay, great." And I came up with this. It's called Ike Boys, and it's a love letter to Japanese anime monster movies, and it's all shot in Oklahoma on a very low budget. When I say low budget, I'm not going to reveal the budget, but it's got Ben Browder, it's got Quinn Lord, it's got Billy Zane, and it's got the Japanese actor Shaku in it. And so it's a marvelous movie with special effects, some done in Japan, some animation done in Japan, but most of it shot in Oklahoma. And it's playing, it opened just this weekend in Tokyo at the IMAX with my poster. This is my poster with it, all over Tokyo. And Eric's doing press conferences, and he's and all kinds of stuff. So, and in Japan, when you go to see a movie, they have what's called theater merchandise. And okay, you go to see a movie here, you spend what, $12 on a ticket. Over there, you spend $18 on a ticket, and then you spend $300 buying the merchandise, which is like usually like little action figures and program books and stuff. Well, anyway, Ike Boys has got T-shirts. It's got a car. It's got my stuff on it all over it, the poster, and it's just there. It is. It's all over Japan, and I'm so.
How cool!
Yeah, and so
That's so
cool. Eric and I have hit it off so well. He's doing more movies, and I'm going to be involved with him, and that's all I'm going to say. So this is how, when you network, this is a lesson here. When you network and you do something and you play on your instincts, it turns into something later that telescopes into something really big, and you take a risk on something. And I mean, I swear to God, even my accountant doesn't understand me, because it's like, they operate in this linear kind of way. And I'm going like, well, I operate in an instinctive kind of way, like if I feel good about something, the money doesn't have to be stellar to work on it. But if it's going to be pleasurable and establish good contacts and good relationships and good, it just, everything falls into place.
You don't know where it's going to lead either. You might do a project that's smaller and it's going to lead to something amazing down the line. So,
and exactly. And I've been doing this 40 years, right? And I've been everybody's going like, "Oh, so it's very seat of the pants." And I'm going, well, I've been seat of the pants for 40 years. I don't know what the hell's going to happen. And, and so it may be great. It may be, it may go nowhere, but the idea is to take a risk on something and take a chance, because if you don't take that risk, you'll never know. Pass or fail, you'll never know. And, the answer is always going to be no if you don't try.
Yep. I don't know about you, but you end up and if it's so out of your comfort range, you might end up with this slightly different style that you're like, "Huh, look at that. Now I have a new style that might lead
Exactly.
to something later." So,
That happened is that I've changed my style so much over the years. This is kind of fun. I've gone from a kind of a real slicker airbrushy style to a much more painterly style where I'm working in, I like tactile and surface texture on things and all that. And I make it a lot of hand movements here doing, but I like a lot of doing a lot of surface texture on things. And it's funny because somebody did this thing where they wanted to try to see what they would get if they could AI me prompt Bob Eggleton, and they can't.
God.
It was a mess. It was an absolute disaster. It looked like Salvador Dali meets Picasso meets Turner or something. It was just a disaster. And I'm looking at
How can AI know what you're doing if half the time you don't know what you're doing, right?
exactly, and it's like that's the thing. If you kind of keep one step ahead of it, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
That's what's been a good thing for me is that I've got a lot of longevity, and I don't, I had like somebody, even my accountant's going,
5 minutes.
he's going like retiring. No, artists don't retire. We
No.
just draw we just draw our lives to a close.
Oh, I was gonna say draw our own conclusions, but yeah, we
Draw,
can.
that's bad. That's bad.
All right. So, have you done any Star Trek book covers? And are you going to be at Dragon Con this year?
No, I'm not going to be at Dragon Con. I got to find a way to get invited to Dragon Con.
I'll be at
Um,
Dragon Con. You should be. Why are you not? You should be at Dragon Con. You should be
I
invited to
know I
Dragon Con.
should be there. I will be at
Talk to
geez,
April about that. She knows people.
yeah, I know. She's got me into
Get
Monster
yeah,
Palooza.
April, get Bob to Dragon Con
She's
next year.
great.
Okay?
She's awesome. She just like
April,
goes right
you're
goes
on
at
that.
like she brings the guy that's running Monster Palooza onto her phone, saying, "This is Bob Eggleton," and and he goes, "Hi, Bob," like that. I'm like, oh, cool,
April, that's
like
your
that.
homework. You're to get
And
Bob to Dragon Con next year.
yeah,
And then
oh,
have you done any have you done any
I'll
Star
tell you
Trek
the
book
great guys.
covers?
If you haven't seen April Solomon's work, go look at it online. She's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant. And and yeah. So it's been. I have not done Star Trek book covers. I have not. I did a magazine cover a long time ago, and I did a bunch of these things called Star Trek plates when they did these collector plates things. And yeah, it's real interesting. This is, I mean, I go back to the '90s and with the Star Trek merchandising, but I always it's always going to be in my heart because that's what got me into science fiction, and it got me the way I think is the original Star Trek series. Like just Kirk and Spock and the way they logically Spock would do something logical, like that, and like the ultimate computer. What a great episode. It's like, go, if you haven't seen it, go see it. It predicted AI in 1967. Go see it. It's awesome. And yeah, so it's just like something that is passion. If you do something and you put your passion into it, you do something amazing and incredible. All the good things will follow, and I really believe that. If you put your heart and soul into it, you put a lot of energy into it, you put a lot of time and a lot of your passion. Like it's like sex. It's like you just go at it, and you just give it all you've got, and it's pass or it's if you don't, it's going to be no. And life is about risks, and if you don't take those risks, you don't know what's going to happen. And I met so many wonderful people in this business, and actors and artists and writers, and they've all done the same thing. They've taken risks, and that's what and the other thing is you got to surround yourself with a community of people who encourage what you do. It's like a little, get people around you that are your tribe. Be in the tribe. There's no room for the negatives and the doubters. Be in the tribe, and everybody will help everybody else out, and that's what's important.
Well, I expect when you're like 150 years old, they're gonna find you fossilized in your studio with like a dinosaur in one hand and brushes in the other hand, all like still trying to paint. So,
Oh yeah, it's
you
like,
know, yeah, you
speaking of
got all kinds of
dinosaur,
toys in
yeah,
your
yeah.
y
Yeah,
yeah,
I've got
or the
like
octopus. You got, like, lots of toys in your studio
oh yeah,
there.
I've got like a woolly, let's say a woolly mammoth,
You got a woolly mammoth there. You got,
and
dinosaurs and
and,
brushes and
and octopus.
yeah, you're gonna be
And a
painting until you're
coelacanth. How many people
I
have a
get
coelacanth in their studio?
I
It's
do
like
not have a coelacanth in
you
my
don't have a coelacanth. And there's plenty of Godzillas. There's too many. You can sort of get an idea what's going on in the background there.
I got fossilized ferns.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I got fossilized mosasaur teeth because they look like
Oh,
dragons.
ooh, that's cool. So, well, we're about done. So, do you have anything else you want to, any URLs or anything you want to pitch?
No, just www.progcorefantasy.com. It's a big project I'm involved with. I think it's gonna be great. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm real easy to contact and talk to.
You got shows coming up you're at, or
I'm
you got
going to be at G Fest. I'm going to be at Shore Leave, which is a Star Trek convention, and then I'm going to be at ArchCon down in St. Louis, and they're great people. And then I go to IllexCon, and that's where I'm going to see April and other people like that. And IllexCon is great fun. And then I'm going to be going to Bologna, Italy in December for a Magic the Gathering thing. And so yeah, so it's all going, it's all sort of
keep traveling. I love traveling.
I do too, but it's been the trouble has been like, again, like, traveling is fine. It's airports and planes it went from pleasure to being in a cattle car. And
Yeah.
the only thing, and schlepping artwork, shipping it around and stuff like that, that's just my demon. You know what I mean? Because it's like it used to be so cheap. You could do that so cheap, and now it's like this little box here, $100 for FedEx. Are you kidding me? Like that.
Yeah.
And yeah. So anyway, so I love everybody. Thank you so much. And I've
Well,
been at this. This is I can say this is my. There's a Bruce Lee quote that I have on my wall, and I'll read it to you. Bruce Lee says, if you spend too much time thinking about a thing, you'll never get it done. Make at least one definite move daily toward your goal. And when you do that, because you can sit and vacillate and worry about things and all that. And in the end, none of that worry is going to buy back the time that that you need. And so you just go at it. And I know we live in a complicated world. Oh, is it complicated? It's scary. There's scary things going on right now. And you know what I mean? And it's scary stuff. But we got to be creative, and we got to work at it. We got to overcome this, and this is, get our passions out there, and that won't be denied.
awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining us. See you later. Bye.
Great time. Thank you. Bye-bye.